Hello, and welcome to a supplemental lecture to finish off Chapter 10, talking about contraception and abortion. If you haven't already, I hope you will soon have a great Thanksgiving with family and/or friends, or maybe you already have and you're uh, trying to sleep off the full stomach. Either way, um, glad to see you, or glad to talk to you a little bit. I did want to finish up Chapter 10 so that we could have that out of the way, and that means, next week we'll do the last two chapters of the that we'll be covering in class. So let me share the screen so so I can remind you where we were last time. Specifically, we were just finishing talking about Plan B, where and it's an interesting slide. I'll point out to you. Notice up here it says that its prescription is needed only for women that are younger than age 17. Discuss. This happens to be one version where there's a single tablet, single dose, but as we pointed out, sometimes it's two doses. And the important thing is the information here is for it to be most effective, you want to take it within as soon as possible. But if it's been more than 3 days since you had unprotected sex, then there's really no point in doing it because, as we see, it can only work if it stops ovulation, and if you had sex on this day, for example, 1, 2, 3 days later, you're out of luck. So, um, and the other time-honored method are behavioral methods, sometimes known as the rhythm method. And the other idea is withdrawal, where the man involved removes his penis from the vagina before he ejaculates, assuming that he has a pretty good idea of when he's going to ejaculate, and assuming that there's some leakage of sperm, semen before that, which is not, at all necessarily true, or not having sex at all, or having non-vaginal sex, right? So having oral sex and/or anal sex, uh, not necessarily at the same time, but relying on oral sex or anal sex for sex. That means obviously there's no chance of a pregnancy. But all of these methods have a pretty high failure rate. Uh, Withdrawal and abstinence and non-vaginal sex, partly because it really requires the maturity and the willpower to avoid having vaginal sex. Um, and it's made particularly more complicated because two people are involved. And so, it's not unusual for couples to think they're relying on abstinence, and they know it's or the rhythm method, and they know it's a bad time to be having sex, but the mood comes over them. And what they ought to do, of course, is use a condom in a situation like that. But if they don't, then people are going to end up being pregnant. And um, and here's how the rhythm method works. It probably works best if the woman is one of those who has an incredibly regular cycle, where she really knows she's on a 28-day cycle. She's been keeping careful track of it, not just in her head, but on a calendar somewhere, and keeping track of it. And she knows that it's a 28-day schedule. That's ideal for the rhythm method because she can be pretty sure, counting from the day of first menses, she can be pretty sure that about 8 days later, she is very fertile. And for the next days until the 17th day of since the onset of menstruation or so, uh, very likely to be fertile, but a few days later will not. And so, as long as they maintain their vaginal sex only during this period, or only during this period, or during the menses itself, which is, there's absolutely no very low risk of getting pregnant, and there's no reason not to have sex during menstruation. A tiny little bit of blood is just another source of lubrication, and so it's just fine unless one person or the other has some aversion to it. But from a health point of view, it's perfectly good time to have sex. Anyway, um, unfortunately, not many women have really regular cycles like that. And on less regular cycles, since you can't really have as good a guess about when ovulation will take place, here there's a 3-day period where it's likely to take place. In this case, notice it's more like an 11-day period where ovulation might take place, and you have to be careful not to gather sperm then too far ahead of either this date or that date. And so in those cases, the rhythm method is one where really the only safe time is to have sex during menses, or 3 weeks later, where you get 1 week to have sex. Gee, I hope you both feel like it before the next menses. So this is why the rhythm method doesn't work. And I told you the joke. The technical term for people who rely on the rhythm, for couples who rely on the technical term for people who rely on the rhythm method for contraception is mommy and daddy. The other possibility, of course, I mentioned briefly, right? Non-coital sex. So there's no equipment needed, no side effects, obviously, and it's just a question of whether you can indeed confine yourself to either anal sex or oral sex, and etc. Then we haven't talked about sterilization methods for men yet. The most common is a vasectomy. It's often done as a in-office procedure, no need for overnight stay or anything like that. Typically, the man is asked to shave the hair from the scrotum before the office appointment. Then in the office, local anesthesia is used so that the patient can be awake and conscious during it. And the surgeon will then feel through the wall of the scrotum to find the vas deferens. If you happen to have a scrotum or access to one, you can feel them yourself. It's really not difficult at all. Upon locating the vas deferens, he can make a small incision in the skin overhead, and inside he will find the vas deferens itself, also within another tissue tube. But these days, the thing to do is to clamp the vas deferens twice and tie off with the ligature one side and the other, and then to remove a length of the vas deferens as a real fail-safe. And so the idea is that sperm coming from here are very unlikely to get through there. But even if they do, they've got the barrier there. And by taking out a segment, it makes it very unlikely that since the two ends won't be facing each other once everything's sewn back together, they're not likely to ever refuse. And so that's how it's done. There are people, I mean, the thing about vasectomy is, technically speaking, they are reversible, right? That a surgeon, who's good enough, might go in, cut the vas deferens again, on the other side of where the sutures were, and using tiny needles, get them to attach again, hoping that there's enough slack in the vas deferens, especially after someone took a segment out of it, that they will stay together and that it will open up, be patent, and sperm might get through, and the person might be able to have children. It's not guaranteed that it's reversible, and so someone getting vasectomy, if they think they someday might change their mind and want to have another kid, the smart thing to do is to put some of their semen in a sperm bank, a couple of donations maybe, and then pay to keep them around until you're finally sure. Other methods have been proposed and tried. So one is to put a put plugs, two plugs in the vas deferens to suture them in place so that they don't go sliding around up and down. And the idea is then all you have to do is reopen the vas deferens, remove the plugs, and hope that the sperm will be able to find their way through. It's um, so there are very few side effects of this procedure. It's not very invasive, not very painful, and so that's for men who have reached a certain age where they're absolutely certain they don't want to take care of a kid in the middle of the night again. Then it's a great uh, method, and it means, assuming it's a stable couple, that neither party needs to worry about contraception for a while. Oh, I should say, most urologists, it's typically done by urologists, most urologists suggest waiting a while and trying to have a few ejaculations where you aren't unprotected, and then maybe even going in a week after the procedure and giving a sperm sample, pardon me, a semen sample, so that can be checked to see if there are any sperm left over. I'm told sometimes there's more than one vas deferens, which um, I suppose could happen, but it's a fail safe. So and then yeah. So, for women, the most common form of sterilization is tubal ligation, or having the tubes tied, talking about the fallopian tubes, also known as the oviducts. And these days, it's almost always done laparoscopically, where a couple of very small incisions are made in the abdomen, and typically uh, gas is inserted into the peritoneum, nitrogen, something like that, just to inflate the peritoneum some, just to sort of uh, be able to see and get access to it. And so the surgeon can use, providing light with one instrument, can use forceps and the like to take care of the tubal ligation. As with vasectomy, the standard procedure is to put two sutures in and to tie off the tube at both ends, and then to remove a segment. And uh, as with, and of course, they do it on both sides. And as with vasectomy, while it is in theory reversible, it's not a good idea to rely on that, or to put your hopes or make your plans thinking that, of course, you're going to be able to do that, because it isn't always reversible. If I don't know the odds, I'm sure it depends on which surgeon you have. I'm sure it depends on how the tubal ligation was done exactly, how much of a segment they removed, things like that. But um, and I suppose if you have enough money and think someday you might want to do in vitro fertilization, because that's very expensive, if you want to be able to change your mind later, I suppose you could go through the procedure to taking the fertility drugs and having eggs harvested, etc., which by itself is going to cost a lot of money. But really, tubal ligation, it should be regarded as final. That really is the end of the childbearing years. Interestingly enough, it doesn't mean that the woman can't serve as surrogate mother, right? So that if, um, um, and I suppose, yeah, in some cases, in vitro fertilization can be used afterwards, because there's nothing wrong with the ovary and nothing wrong with the uterus. And so um, uh, that's one way that it could be circumvented, but not reversed. So there. So I wanted to wrap up chapter 10 because I still got two chapters to go to finish. We'll talk about um, uh, atypical sexualities and sexual disorders, not in that order, sexual disorders and atypical sexualities. And then we'll wrap it up next week. So again, I hope you've had a great um, holiday weekend, and If you're traveling, safe travels, and see you Tuesday.